Welcome to Lines That Last, the podcast where we dig deep into redlining and its lasting effects on our communities. I'm Joshua, and I'm here with my friends, Kaylin and Angel.
Hey everyone, I'm Kaylin.
And I'm Angel. Today we're tackling the deep, often painful history of redlining and how it stripped people of opportunities and why it still matters today. Let's get into it.
Let's roll back the clock. Picture October 29th, 1929, Black Tuesday. The stock market crashes and everything goes haywire. Bank failures, mass unemployment, and a dire economic depression takes hold.
Man, back in the day, everyone was broke. It was chaotic everywhere.
Exactly. And while the country was trying to rebuild, a couple of federal agencies, like the Homeowners Loan Corporation and the Federal Housing Administration, were set up under the New Deal. Their goal was to help people get back up on their feet.
But here's where it gets tricky. Right after these agencies started, they also began using a practice called redlining. HOLC created maps that literally used colors to designate which neighborhoods were risky for loans.
And guess who ended up in these red zones? Black and minority communities were marked in red, instantly making them high risk. They were denied home loans, mortgages, and you name it.
That wasn't just bad luck. It was a targeted system that kept entire communities from building wealth. It meant that people couldn't access education, quality housing, or even proper healthcare because they were essentially erased from the American dream.
Think about it. You grow up in a place where no matter how hard you work, you're denied basic rights, like the right to a safe, quality home, simply because of your race. It's like being told your future is fixed and disadvantaged.
Yeah, imagine that you're walking in a neighborhood's red line boundary and knowing that you were excluded before you even had a chance. This created physical and psychological walls that divided communities for generations.
And because of that wall, the communities that were labeled red suffered immensely. They were underinvested in, schools were underfunded, and public services were seriously lacking. It wasn't just about housing, it affected every aspect of life.
Absolutely. Redlining deepened the wealth gap by preventing minority families from accessing financial services, which in turn meant no generational wealth building through home ownership.
So, it wasn't just red ink on a map. It was red lines drawn on people's lives, keeping them from opportunities and better futures.
Now, let's talk about responsibility. Who was behind redlining?
The U.S. government, along with banks and private real estate interests, play a huge role. They use government-backed programs to enforce these discriminatory maps. They violate the promise of the equal protection under the 14th Amendment.
But here's something inspiring. Even though redlining was engineered by those in power, communities didn't sit back quietly. Grassroots activists, community leaders, and civil rights groups like the NAACP fought back.
Right. They organized protests, sit-ins, and legal challenges. For example, after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s tragic death, President Lyndon B. Johnson pushed through the Fair Housing Act of 1968, which marked a turning point in the fight against housing discrimination.
And later, the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977 came in as a way to encourage banks to invest in every neighborhood, not those on an A side of the map.
So, while redlining initially set the stage for inequity, the fight against it was and still is a collective responsibility. Everyone, from community activists to presidents, has a role in righting these wrongs.
Alright guys, now we will play a voice clip from an interview with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. about his input on Louisville, Kentucky's experience with redlining.
Well, it's a very simple thing, and that is to make Louisville an open city where it is possible for Negroes to buy and rent houses anywhere without restrictions on the basis of race. And this needs to be undergirded with a very strong housing bill in the city itself.
Man, just hearing about that clip gave you goosebumps. It is just a reminder that redlining wasn't an abstract policy. It was real and personal.
Exactly. Hearing someone talk about losing the chance to build a home, a future, just because of where they lived, it hits home hard.
It reminds us that these policies laid the groundwork for today's social and economic inequalities, and the fight isn't over yet.
Fast forward to today. Redlining may be illegal, but its legacy is everywhere. Neighborhoods that were once labeled high risk still suffer from chronic underinvestment.
I've seen it firsthand. Poor schools, struggling public services, and lower home values. This is a vicious cycle without investment. Communities can't grow, and this means wealth gaps persist.
Studies show that even healthcare and grocery store access are worse in those same areas. It's like a ripple effect. Redlining set off a chain of events that continues to affect minority communities today.
And when you think about homeownership being a key path to building generational wealth, the fact that many minority families still can't access it means the inequality is self-perpetuating.
There is a lot of work to be done, not just about changing policies, but also about investing in communities that were once starved of opportunity.
But it's not only about the houses. Redlining also meant a lack of social infrastructure. When the entire neighborhoods were cut off from investments, it wasn't just the houses that suffered. It was the schools, hospitals, and even the streets.
Right. Urban planning itself was tainted by redlining. Decisions about where to build highways, hospitals, and parks were often made to keep minority communities on the fringe.
And when you look at the long-term effects, those neighborhoods have lower property values, higher crime rates, and fewer opportunities for upward mobility.
That's why tackling redlining and its legacy means fighting for better urban planning and community reinvestment. We need to break down those walls that were built decades ago.
There have been some real efforts lately to mend these historic injustices. Cities like Detroit and Los Angeles are rolling out plans to reinvest in formerly redlined neighborhoods.
Detroit's Future City Plan and Los Angeles multi-billion-dollar initiatives are trying to rewrite the narrative. In 2023, new acts like the Home Ownership Opportunity and Mortgage Insurance Act aim to widen the access of home loans to these undeserved communities.
Not to mention local grassroots efforts. Community groups are organizing to demand better services, improve schools, and most importantly, real investment in areas that were left behind.
It's about leveling the playing field so that every family has a fair shot at building a future regardless of where they were born.
Even access to healthcare is compromised. Former redline neighborhoods often have fewer clinics, and the ones that are existing are under-resourced compared to those more affluent, predominantly white neighborhoods.
It's a systematic issue, one that requires not only policy change, but also a cultural shift to recognize how deeply these barriers still exist and what we can do to tear them down.
That's why education, advocacy, and active community reinvestment are all critical components of reversing the damage done by redlining, and every one of us has a part to play in that process.
So what can we do? First off, we need to learn and speak about our history. Understanding redlining is the first step towards dismantling its legacy.
We can support policies and initiatives that invest in historically marginalized neighborhoods. That means voting, participating in community meetings, and even volunteering locally.
We also have to hold banks, local governments, and real estate entities accountable, demand transparency and accountability so that the mistakes of the past do not continue to shape our future.
But if we each do our part, whether it's educating ourselves, supporting local projects, or even just talking about it like we are now, we can push for change.
Redlining is a chapter in our past, but its story isn't over. Our future depends on how we address these systematic inequalities. We owe it to ourselves, our communities, and the next generation to break these cycles.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the legacy of redlining. We hope today's conversation sparked more questions, more discussions, and most importantly, action.
Stay informed, keep questioning the status quo, and do not be afraid to stand up for what's right. We are all in this together.
Until next time, let's build a future where every neighborhood is valued, every person is seen, and every family can thrive.
This has been Lines That Last. Thanks for listening, and remember, history is not just in the books, it's in how we shape our future every day.